Last Thursday, when Bitcoin fell 4% to $108,000, the market got fearful, got extremely fearful, or very close to it. It was the most fearful it had been since the tariff collapse low. You can see back here, it dropped to 18 on that reading. Since then, it's bounced into neutral, and we've seen a pretty good positive, one would say, close for the daily and for the weekly chart. Now, what does the market have to do from this point to get to a new all-time high? It looks like we have three things to cover, three things that Bitcoin needs to do to get back to that new all-time high price and hopefully continue on with our predictive cycle leading us through to Q4. So that's what we're going to cover in today's video. Make sure you hit the like button if you find value, and of course subscribe to the channel. I do an update video on the channel nearly every single day covering Bitcoin, cryptos, the stock markets, the real estate cycle, and precious metals. It's what I do full time. Hopefully you find value from it. If you do, share it with a friend. Go on the journey with them together. So we're starting with Bitcoin as we work our way through the markets here. Looking at the analysis for the update, we've got Bitcoin down 14% from the all-time high. As we've covered with the daily, that was the scare bar, and we've seen a reversal here for the short term. Now, there are three main levels that I'm watching, and as I said in the intro, I'm looking at three significant points to get to a new all-time high price. I think Bitcoin needs to cover these three things in order to get to that point because it's done that in the past. That's essentially what you'd see across markets to get them to that point of changing that trend from, in this case, the short-term bearishness or short-term downtrend into that longer-term uptrend. And essentially, we can replicate these same signals across any market. So if you're learning this in regards to Bitcoin, then you can use it for Ethereum, you could use it for US stock markets, you could potentially use it for your stocks as well. The main point is to back test it on your markets. But from what I've seen when it comes to Bitcoin, it works very, very well. And I didn't learn it on Bitcoin, I learned it on other markets. Therefore, it has some relevance in other areas. It typically shows that strength to the upside. So in the short term, I'm watching three key levels. 112 has been on the chart for a long time now. It's basically the swing low when the market corrected, when Bitcoin corrected from the first high at 123K, bounced off that level. And it was also the top in May. That was the next all-time high before it corrected to that low around $99,000. So at the moment, I'm only looking to the upside. I'm only talking about the upside here. I'll discuss the downside, but we're just looking to the upside first. So if Bitcoin can get above 112, step one. Step two, 118. The significance of 118,000 are these two tops that, and well, there's a third point, but the two tops here are from the FOMC meeting. The second point, the first point was when Powell talked about the interest rates going up. And as I'll cover in a sec, these areas on the chart that represent price come down to that wall of worry. Basically, when news items have occurred, this is where the price has been for those news items. Therefore, for the market to overcome those particular news items, fundamental events, we need to see the price get to those levels as well. And then we can see from a technical standpoint in advance if it's going to get to that stage as opposed to just waiting for it. So we're watching for these changes in trend early on. Then once it gets to those price targets and consolidates above them, then you can start to see that strength building in the trend that had started earlier on. 112, the first point, 118, the next point. Now there are some short-term levels in between, but these are the main three that I'm watching for that longer-term change, and then I'll get to the 3 points in regards to the new all-time high price. After 118, 120, pretty simply, you can see a lot of these highs that formed around that level at 120, and the price for Bitcoin on the daily was not able to close above that on 3 consecutive occasions. So we can see it's closed once above it, 120,100, another time here, 123. Big reversal bar that happened in August, but we want to see multiple closes above it to consolidate, to basically form that base before it can get to the next high levels. So that's one of the points that we're watching for this longer term outlook. On the way up, we're looking at 118. That also lines up around the 7-year resistance line. So That's the news event here, the J-Pow news event, the 118 here, or 117.5. And the next 117.5, when we had the FOMC meeting, then 24 hours later, the price tested that level and then got rejected. And then it was a sell the news event. And then we're watching for that level to come back. So these are the news events and market sentiment around those price levels. So the first obvious level is around the 124,000, which was the all-time high. That's pretty obvious. The 120s, I've explained that level, the technical significance of the $120,000 level. We hadn't seen multiple daily closes. And we should know by now that the professionals control the close. So if the market's going to get above that price level and you get the close above that level, then you've got the quote-unquote professionals controlling the move. Now, obviously, Bitcoin trades 24/7. There's basically no closing time in the price. And so one would argue, well, there is no closing time. Now, there is a closing price for the market, and that is at UTC midnight. For my time zone, generally it's 10 o'clock in the morning because of East Coast Australia. You just have to get the right time zone from where you are. And systems are based off the closing price as well. So that's the very important significance of the closing price. So we have open prices, closing prices, watch the closing prices, very, very important, even on 24/7 markets. All-time high, next levels were covered, FOMC, J-Pow, 24 hours after, basically somewhere around the 117.5, 118. Easy number, call it 118 because the 7-year resistance line, this diagonal that's trending up over time, is also climbing. So the longer it takes to get to that point, the price is going to get slightly higher and higher, only by a few bucks every day, but it's getting higher and higher. And that's the level we can see from 2017 and connected to the 2021 top. It rejected twice in this cycle already. We've gone above it, support, broke down above, and basically rejected recently for these last 2 times. The next news events, or more importantly, basically market structure, are 2 significant breakdown points. That's the 22nd and the 25th of September, because you can see a lot of buying happening at this area here, mid-September, and then you had this big breakdown bar, which we've called before, based on Wyckoff analysis, something like a gotcha bar. So this is part of Wyckoff's study, and it's from another book, but essentially it's like a gotcha. People piling into the market at these prices. You can see I'm circling on the chart, and then they get you. The market makers, whoever you want it to be, whether it's manipulation, whether it's Binance, it doesn't matter. The point is the market breaks down, there's a sell-off, and all these people are now trapped in their position. Whether they are long-term traders, short-term traders, investors, whatever it is, people are trapped here, and trapped meaning that they don't want to sell for a loss. So you get this bar here, sells off, right? You're in here at 116-ish, now you're down at 113, 114, and you just go, I don't want to sell for a loss. That's the first breakdown level, and you want to see price get above that point. So that's the key area for the short term there. So 115.5, and the most closest bar to the price action is this one here on the 25th. So again, people were buying the dip around this level, around 111 to 113, and then 25th of September happened, down 4%, got you again, but on a smaller time frame. And we can see that with the Bitcoin ETF flows as well. Lots of people piling into the market, lots of investors piling into the market through this period in September, mid-September, still piling in. These are some of the highest levels we've seen in history. Not as big as around those highs in July, but still very, very significant buying action for the Bitcoin ETF. And then you can see it's basically sold off from that point, or less interest, and then it started to sell off that we've seen recently here. So we're seeing selling action coming in around these lows, and Sunday we saw a rise on the price of Bitcoin, which also coincided with closing above the $112,000. So it's done one of those first things. The next levels, short term, 114, 115.5. That's not going to be enough to totally change the trend, but it's a really, really good move in the short term to then get it back to 118 and 120. So I have alluded to the first major point for the turnaround, $120,000 being just above those closes that we were watching. and also above the monthly close. So the monthly close of July was the highest in history. And when you get those, generally when you get a highest monthly close in history, there is going to be a new all-time high price coming up. And you can see, as an example, November here, big highest monthly close. Highest monthly close in history for November. Then there was another new all-time high price, but not monthly close. But we're getting a new all-time high price. That's what we're talking about. And then the following month, you didn't get a new all-time high monthly close, a marginally higher high, then collapse. So that's one of those times there where you did see a new all-time high price, but it collapsed after that point. And you got a pretty significant reversal bar going on here in December. New all-time high price, market sold off, and then we got a new all-time high again. A new all-time high monthly close in 2021. You can see here in November, and then a new all-time high price, new all-time high price, new all-time high price, again and again. This one here reversed, and then the market sold off. So you got a lower monthly close, market sold off. And in these months here, you've got new all-time high monthly close, new all-time high monthly close, new all-time high monthly close, and so on. Of course, there's going to be a time where it's going to reverse, but generally speaking, when we're looking at the balance of probabilities, there's a high chance that you're going to see a new all-time high price once we get a new all-time high monthly close. So I could go back throughout history, but I think you get the point about that. So that's 2 out of the 3 points to get to a new all-time high price. The first that we covered is closing above significant resistance. And we're looking at that on the daily here, 120 grand. Now, the other point was the monthly close. Are we going to get to a new all-time high monthly close? You can see the highest so far was 115,750. So call it 116K. Again, that's very close to the 120 and very close to the $118,000, which we've covered on the daily chart. So we're still a little way off that. I don't think it's going to happen for September. We've got 2 days left to get to the end of the month. The third thing is the balance of traders here, basically the commitment of traders. And at the moment, we don't have any sort of resolution for the commitment of traders. So where are the traders positioned? You've got the large specs and the commercials. They're the two major ones here, reds and blues. The blues are the large. They're usually on the wrong side of the trade, the large speculators. And the commercials are the reds. They're usually on the, let's call it the profitable side of the trade. Because there's really no wrong and right. It's just, do you make profits or do you lose money? And so the reds are typically on that side of making profits. It doesn't mean that every single red bar you see here, they're going to be making profits. It's them positioning themselves to get into that position of making the profits. And the same deal here for the blues. You know, they're starting to get short. So on this side of the line, there are short nets, speaking from a net position. And these guys are long from a net position. It doesn't mean that every single commercial trader is on the long side. It just means from a net position they are. Same deal for the large specs. So at the moment, not really much happening here. There's not really anything to go off. There is obviously still a lot of traders there, but when you net them out, you've got, in some cases, like the other week here, almost 50-50 a long, 50-50 a short on both sides. And only recently you've got a little bit shorter here for the reds, being the commercials, which are typically on the profitable side of the trade. So there's really not much action going on here. So from the short-term perspective, we're seeing some growth, well, some good signs that Bitcoin wants to climb again, but we haven't got enough of those signals yet to get to that new all-time high price, which then leads us over to the sentiment and the cycles. Now, in terms of the sentiment, we still haven't seen any sort of significant shift from retail coming back into the space. You've got the readings here for Google at 21 for crypto, 34. That's a new day, so let's use the day before. It's at 14 and 26, so still very, very low interest here, low search volume. Nothing like what we saw at the highs back in August or the other highs in July. So we still need to see this thing climb probably back past roughly 50 on the interest for Bitcoin. And for cryptos, somewhere above 30 is typically more people coming back to search and to trade and so on. And as they trade, well, you obviously get liquidations. We've seen some pretty significant longs getting liquidated, and that was at the times when Bitcoin crashed. So again, with leverage getting flushed out of the system, that's also a good sign that we are somewhere around a low. It's not to say that it is the low, but we're somewhere around it. So we're still seeing good signs that the market wants to go up, but just when is the question. And hopefully we can answer that question with some of the cycle analysis. Now, of course, there's nothing that is guaranteed in the market, but so far, this has been the best thing to a guarantee. I'm trying to stress that no one knows for sure. That's just the nature of trading. Looking at our composite cycle, 5 and 10-year cycles for Bitcoin. If this is a first video of yours, we use these, this is what Gann used, 5, 10, 20 years, 40 years, 60-year cycles, some very significant cycles. Of course, Bitcoin doesn't have that data, so we use the ones that we have, the 5 and the 10-year combined, gives us the red line in the background. Red line here, the blue is the current price. And in terms of the red, you can see we had a dump early in the month. And that's what happened for Bitcoin. On the 1st, we saw that low price so far. 2 more days to go. But so far, the low has been the 1st of September. So early in the month, we saw a rally. That's what the red line did also for the last, for the 5 and the 10-year cycle. And then we saw the sell-off. And that's exactly what's happened so far. So if it's going to follow, to some sort of degree with the 5 and the 10-year cycle, well, we should start to see a bit of a rally here and then maybe a bit of a sell-off. A tough time for probably the first week or so for October. You can see the date down here just above my head. And before it starts to get a little bit cleaner and clearer, it's going to be around the middle of the month. Of course, this looks like it's all easy going straight up in those dates from 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. But at the time, it might not seem like that. In retrospect, it potentially will seem like, oh, that was an easy trade there. You've seen it break out of the highs. And maybe by that time in October, the 1st or 2nd week, more likely the 2nd week, we ideally see it break out of the previous highs there of about 118,000. So it's really not too far away when you think about it, possibly a couple of weeks, provided Bitcoin doesn't break down from these lows at 107. And if it doesn't get any further than the 99K on the 50% level. So as I said in the intro, that's the upside that we're watching. And then I was going to discuss some of the downside. Those 2 major points, because I've got a lot more to get through in today's video, those 2 major areas we're watching is 107 for a continuation on the downtrend, and then bigger things could happen if the price breaks 99K. Bigger things meaning that there could be a longer consolidation before an eventual uptrend, or that August was the high. Neither of those things have happened, therefore it's not time to discuss some bigger corrections. We can leave that for another video and get on with the rest of the data for today's video. September, slightly green at the moment. I think it's about a few percent up at the time of this video. This is looking at the forward returns. The suggestion that I had at the beginning of the month when I analyzed the data was that we would see September drop and then close green. We got a marginal drop on the 1st by a couple of $100. So we got it. And we've got 2 more days to go to see whether the monthly does hang out there in the green. At the moment, it's just up by 3%. So yeah, look, it could close slightly red as well, unless we get 2 big dumps, then significant red or up. But anyway, point being, it's still there in the green. USDT dominance was looking like it wanted to break out, but it got rejected dead on the exact point that we wanted it to, because that was the 50% of the entire range. That's this red horizontal through the middle. And last week, rejected on that almost to the exact percent and closed underneath the 2 previous highs, which is a good sign for the crypto bulls. We generally want to see these closes underneath those previous highs, because that could suggest that we're going to see further downside over the coming weeks. Even if there is another test, generally it is supporting the idea, the theory that there is going to be some coming weakness. Bitcoin dominance, probably rallying up here as we've been covering for several weeks now. You can see the base that was forming around 57 and watching to see if it gets any sort of traction towards 60%, which could then flip things back to the altcoins. The total market cap is also holding up roughly 3.65. That's the low that was just put in, and with a close at 3.8. And for the total market cap, same sort of theories apply in regards to the monthly closes and closing above previous resistance levels, especially on the dailies for consecutive days. New all-time high, I think, is basically guaranteed once the total market cap can close above $4 trillion. I'm watching here on the weekly, but of course, as I've talked about before, also on the monthly here. So let's just span this out. The 4 trillion's just slightly overhead at the moment, 2 days to go. This, if it closes where it is, could be one of the highest monthly closes, or could be the highest monthly close in history, which is a good sign for the rest of the market. Total 3, which is your altcoins, basically everything excluding Bitcoin and ETH, also in a relatively good position. Nice close at the end of the week. 4th highest close in history, even though it was a red week. So testing some of the low side, higher lows still forming. It just seems like there's still another bit of time to go to consolidate this before we move higher. We've talked about that time, hopefully looking around that 1 to 2 weeks. But for ETH, it still sits on the side of further downside. You can see the speculators are still heavily long and the commercials here still heavily short. This is just going back a couple of weeks. And since then, there's been updates for the commitment of traders, and it is still very, very short for the commercials, whereas the large speculators are getting even more long here for Ethereum. So that's not great news for the price of Ethereum because the large specs are usually wrong. Think of the guys that I mentioned on the channel before who are basically buying up at these highs, those funds, Tom Lee and those guys who keep talking about ETH going to 20, 60, 100 grand, whatever ridiculous number they come up with. That seems to be the type of buyer who keeps buying up at whatever price. But ETH has already come down nearly 23% from the top. Nice close. I think there's still further upside to go. But what the data is suggesting is that it needs to test some lower prices first, consolidate, and then come up to test to get to those fresh highs again. 44, 48, maybe even a $5,000 ETH. That's what we're looking out for once we get this flush, or that the commitment neutralizes. That's the next thing you're looking for, some sort of neutrality to come. ETH BTC still sitting around the 3.6%. Should we see ETH fall and Bitcoin go up, then we'd definitely see the ETH BTC start to fall as well. Still got a target here of roughly 3 to 3.3%. And for the end of the cycle, I'm still looking for at least a test to the 4.3 area, 4% to 4.3, possibly even a nice strong move higher to roughly 5.3%, which would be a very strong move for ETH USD. Sol USD also holding out here. We've been watching the time frames, still sitting at 5 months to the upside, and in previous moves, Sol USD has done 5, 6, 7 months max to the upside before it needs time to pause. So you can see this one back in 2020 to 2021, 5 months to the upside, and then it took 2 months to pause, consolidate the move that it did for 5 months before it could push again for several months. Okay, so that's why I think we're seeing this happen again for Sol. You've got this pullback after a pretty significant move to 250. It's still holding out relatively well, so it seems like it's wanting to consolidate the gains in a strong position. Above 195 is good, above 210 even better, above 223, great. So not saying I'm bearish on Sol, I'm saying the markets, the data has suggested it's going to need time to consolidate those gains, and it seems like it's taking that time right now. That's the strength that I'm telling you. If it breaks down from those lows, then there's the weakness beginning to form. So still in a relatively good position. Now, and overall, the traditional markets have also held out well. The update here is that we've started a new week. Friday closed as an inside day, lower highs, higher lows, and we did not get the 3 bars down signal, which generally suggests slower going. We've seen it many times before. Subscribe to the channel, like all that sort of stuff, so that you can stay up to date with these signals as well as they play out. But we didn't get it, and it's invalidated. We cannot get the 3 bar signal now. There's been 2 days down. That was not a down day. Lower highs, lower lows, did not happen. And this is now invalidated. So that's good news there, even though we're watching for a consolidation for the S&P 500 based on the 5-year cycle that came out of the COVID crash and rise. Pretty much almost, everything's been happening almost dead on time here, dead on cue for that. The NASDAQ, similar sort of thing. It didn't get the 3 bar signal, which is a great sign. Just more consolidation over this, September, October period. Same sort of thing for the Dow Jones. Did not get the 3 bars down. You got 2 down and 1 up. So even slightly stronger overall. So US dollar is still holding up all right. It's got a little bit of work to do to test those levels at 98. But longer term, I think we still have further downside for this cycle, which is potentially good news for our risk assets. Speaking of risk assets, a new all-time high here for gold. Monday, session hasn't even opened. New all-time high price, $3,828. And silver, $46.80 an ounce on Friday. Ran to a new all-time high, 46.9. And today, a new all-time high price. Basically, 47 US dollars an ounce. Therefore, Bitcoin against silver has been coming down. So at the moment, you've got better returns from silver. Well, for quite some time now. If you go back to March 2024, that was one of the significant peaks, and the price is now down. So essentially, when you're comparing Bitcoin to silver, now you can only buy 2,340 ounces of silver, whereas at some of those peaks, you could buy 3,400 ounces of silver with one Bitcoin, and that March peak was 2,900 ounces of silver. So essentially, the gains are getting bigger for silver than they are for Bitcoin. Eventually, we're going to see some sort of bounce and Bitcoin becoming stronger than silver. And I think we should be very much watching those areas for some long-term rotation between assets. If you are a long-term trader or investor, then check out TIA Premium. We discuss this in further detail, navigating the end of the cycle, the peak into the 18-year cycle, and of course, what we're looking to do in that corrective phase of the cycle. Links to that are in the video description. And if you want further socials to follow like X, Instagram, and so on, links are down below. Don't get scammed out there. I don't have any promotions going on Telegram or WhatsApp. Just use the official links down below. And I'll see you guys back at the next video. Thanks again. Take care and peace out.